Do you know that in Racine, Wisconsin, black residents are 12 times more likely to land in prison than white residents? And on most occasions, 19.1% of blacks receive longer jail terms than whites who are charged for the same crimes. What if I told you that 15.8% of black kids in the US face race-based bullying and harassment till date? What if I told you that a large percentage of blacks still undergo ill treatments from the whites on most occasions, like the treatment given to them in stores, restaurants, and other public places? What if I told you that blacks still receive little or no proper health care in white hospitals in most parts of America? How about when they're applying for loans, voting during elections, applying for job opportunities or promotions? Do racial segregation still exist in these aspects? It's quite appalling seeing that the blacks are still being mistreated by the whites even till date, despite the painful, unforgettably cruel past that they had experienced already at their hands. In this video, we will be unraveling to you the top 10 racial states in the US, and while we're at it, don't forget to support our work by kindly hitting the thumb button, sharing video with friends and families to keep spreading our eye-opening black narrative, and subscribe to stay with us for more interesting and mind-boggling videos ahead. These lists may cause some shock, offense, bafflement, or create a feeling of discomfort in you, while for others they just might feel that these areas aren't even enough. However, it is important to note that not everyone in these places you're about to hear are racist, but unfortunately the racists in these cities are way more than the anti-racists. Now, bringing you the list of these cities from a descending hierarchy, let the countdown begin. Number 10, Pulaski, Tennessee. Pulaski, a town with a racial makeup of 67.94% whites, 18.54% blacks, and 9.87% of other races. Pulaski, Tennessee is known as the birthplace of the Ku Klux Klan, popularly abbreviated as KKK, or the Klan was founded in December 24, 1865 by 6 ex-Confederate soldiers for the purpose of terrorizing, killing, and burning the already freed blacks, abolitionists, and white sympathizers. The group, which started up as a small racist club, has now grown into a large troop with so many members worldwide. Today, many Pulaski white residents support the plaque as it represents rivalry in the face of the Union and not a representation of racism. And as this is a sentiment that doesn't agree with many black Americans who reside in the town, they're often compelled to stand up and speak up for their rights. Also, other locals are doing their best to fight the reputation through social actions, arts, and so on. An instance of this is the Unsung Heroes Project, the Painting for the Trail of Tears Museum, which teaches about the Indian Act removal, an act which forced Native Black Americans off their lands. Number 9, Danville, Illinois. Danville, Illinois is notable for its racially motivated riots and street fights, which likely ends in the casualties of many. One of such events is the deadly assault on African Americans at the Virginia Market in November 1883, in which 7 black individuals were killed and over 20 were severely injured. Although the street fights and racial segregation has been minimized, there are still traces of racial segregation. A quick glance at the street fight that took place in the month of May 2022, where a group of protesters displayed a White Lives Matter sign the same day a white young man had allegedly shot 13 persons of color at a supermarket in an all-black residence. Apart from the street fights, Danville is known to have great hatred for people of other races in terms of education, health, leasing houses out for blacks, employment of blacks, and all that. Next on the list, number 8, Fresno, California. Fresno, California, which could also be referred to as the home of hate groups, is home to over 74 hate groups, making it the state with the highest number of hate groups in America. Over the last 2 decades, more than 3/4 of the hate-driven crimes in Fresno County, 268, which is about 355 incidents, have been perpetrated in Fresno, and most of these crimes were linked with racism. Since this hate-fueled crimes have persisted, the people of color living in Fresno have always had a share of their own story of the racial discrimination in the city. As of today, The census number in the city shows that just 13.76% of Fresno's white population are below the poverty rate, as opposed to the 33.19% of blacks. Number 7. Milwaukee. This area has been politically divided for years, with urban Milwaukee County voters favoring Democrats, while suburban Waukesha, Ozalkee, and Washington counties primarily support Republican candidates. According to an analysis done by Journal Sentinel, Milwaukee's biggest and most influential newspaper company, only 1 in 8 Metro Milwaukee voters lived in a neighborhood decided by single digits in the 2012 presidential contest. Meanwhile, nearly 6 in 10 blacks lived in a neighborhood decided by 30 points or more. Unlike in many other large metros, where voting patterns are a purple patchwork of neighborhoods and tracts, Milwaukee has long been one of the most racially divided cities in the nation. The present political polarization, says Milwaukee native and Boston University professor of political science, Catherine Levine Einstein, is almost entirely driven by racial segregation. Like many other cities, many of Milwaukee's white residents decamped to the suburbs in the 1950s and 1960s. But as the Journal Sentinel points out, Milwaukee hasn't experienced a far more recent trend, the movement of blacks and Latinos into the suburbs, that is changing the metropolitan landscape and making the suburbs of some large metros such as Chicago and Detroit more democratic. The racial divide is reflected in a host of other measures in Milwaukee, from education to poverty to marriage rates. Number 6. Racine, Wisconsin. A city widely known for its unfair judgment against blacks in court cases, high rate of oppression and harassment towards the blacks and so on, is Racine in Wisconsin.
The disparity is great. It's embedded in the fiber of this town,
says the Wisconsin State Chairperson of the NAACP Criminal Justice Committee in an interview where he made mention that the inequality rate is unacceptable. Recent census reports state that 30.8% of black Racine area residents live in poverty, almost 4 times the corresponding white poverty rate of 8.7%. Black unemployment in the Racine area is at 13.1%. While unemployment in the white community is at 5.1%. The Census Board also looked at the city's home ownership rates, which showed that 30.6% of Racine black residents owned a home in contrast to the 74.8% of white residents who own a home. But how come about this? Were the blacks too lazy to work and get money that'll be enough to get them their own personal houses? Of course not. They are more industrious than the majority of the whites. They work incredibly more than them, as securing a job is no easy task at all. So on getting one, they work diligently enough to make sure they hold on to it. Despite working all their asses off on their jobs, they still end up being paid meager stipends, which is barely enough for them to take care of themselves and their families. This, to a great extent, would often deter them from making an effort towards owning a home. Apart from this, there were laws laid down that deterred blacks from owning certain properties like houses. A good example of these laws is redlining, a law that denied blacks access to loans, insurance, and restrictive covenants. Restrictive covenants are agreements limiting property sales to the blacks. Also, current reports show that only 7.4% of black adults in Racine, Wisconsin possess a bachelor's degree, the 12th smallest share of any metro area nationwide, and 19.3 percentage points less than the 26.7% college attainment rate for white adults in the metro area. Number 5. Crown Heights. Located in central Brooklyn, Crown Heights is a historically black neighborhood consisting of African Americans and Caribbean, with a sizable Jewish minority. This city is also known to be one of the worst places a black person could possibly live in, as there are known to be several cases of racial segregation that always led to blacks engaging in protests every now and then, seeking freedom and equality. There have been no notable cries of justice in this very city.
You're making money off black people's pain.
Do you know how many mothers have lost children to gun violence?
I'm tired of seeing my friends, my neighbors being displaced and harassed.
These were the cries of most black individuals living in Crown Heights at an open forum on July 22, 2017. Like many neighborhoods in northern metropolises that received African Americans from the South and black immigrants in the 19th and 20th centuries, Crown Heights became a racially segregated but socioeconomically and ethnically diverse ghetto as a result of discriminatory housing practices that excluded blacks from most neighborhoods. In addition to suffering the economic effects of racism, Crown Heights residents have felt stigmatized by the media's negative and sensational depictions of life in America's black neighborhoods. These portrayals, according to Anderson in 2012, are effectively racializing the efforts of blacks in coping with the effects of economic distress, and inscribing the conceptual fusion of blackness, poverty, and violence into many whites' perceptions of blacks and where they live. Next on the list is number 4, Peoria, Illinois. This city, like every other racist city that you know, has a clear divide between the white population and the black population. The rate of racial segregation in this city is immensely high. In Peoria, residents of color live mostly in the South Side, a low-income neighborhood meant for residents living below the poverty line. The median family income for South Side residents is less than half of average residents' family income, and only 30.6% of black residents own their own homes, compared to 76.1% of white residents. Another instance of racial segregation was during the fall of 2021 student enrollment at Illinois Central College, which included only 808 black students and 5,512 white students. Such a gap, right? And as if the above mentioned aren't enough, the death rate of black individuals in Peoria County between the ages of 25 and 64 is incredibly more rampant than that of their white counterparts. But why? The answer is actually obvious. Little or no health care for people of color, poor feeding, and all the rest plight counting in that line. From slavery to sundown towns, redlining to disinvestment, and other institutional biases, the reality described today as systemic racism has been present in one form or another in Peoria for centuries. But it can be difficult to quantify just how systemic racism affects black populations and other people of color in the present day. That's one of many questions a commission in Peoria County has been trying to answer over the past few years. The Joint Commission on Racial Justice and Equity was formed in late 2020 in the wake of the killing of George Floyd. The first phase of the commission's efforts culminated at the end of last month, when it released a 30-page report outlining racial inequalities in both the city and the county. Number 3, Mississippi. Mississippi happens to be one of the famous states in the United States of America. History has it that Mississippi joined the Union as the 20th state in 1817 and got its name from the Mississippi River, which forms its western border. Early inhabitants of the area that became Mississippi included the Choctaw, Natchez, and Chickasaw. Spanish explorers arrived in the region in 1540, but it was the French who established the first permanent settlement in present-day Mississippi in 1699. What we're saying in essence is, Mississippi has been known for its brutal racist and segregatory practices over the years, starting with slavery, continuing with the Jim Crow era. Mississippi had the highest percentage of African Americans of any state in the country, but they still face discrimination in areas such as housing, employment, you name it. Apart from Mississippi's long history on slavery, there's still so much racism in the state, even until date. The rate of racism in the state is incredibly on the high side that a saying was attached to its name. Racism is built into the very bones of Mississippi. The scars Mississippi leaves on black past is a deep, unhealing wound. They had made blacks grow up with the mentality that they were totally nothing. History clarifies that Mississippi made blacks walk with their heads down and off the sidewalk whenever they would walk the street and eventually run into a white man or woman. They didn't allow the blacks to test the clothing or shoes that they wanted to buy. They restricted the blacks from using certain places like restrooms, certain restaurants, schools, and so on. How about the impartial judgment that is being passed down on a case between a white and a black? Their demeaning treatment has a large impact on the lives of the blacks and their young generations, who are made to think that they were totally nothing but trash. Number 2, Harrison, Arkansas. Second on the list is Harrison, Arkansas. This city of Harrison is the county seat of Boone County, Arkansas, United States. According to the 2019 Census Bureau estimates, the racial makeup of the town was 94.66% white, 0.42% black, 0.46% Asian, and 3.95% other races. The town has a very vast history of racism, as there were 2 race riots in the early 20th century and an influx of white supremacist organizations during the late 20th and early 21st centuries. The catalyst for change was the St. Louis and North Arkansas Railroad, which is now referred to as the Missouri and North Arkansas Railroad. It was built through Harrison in 1901, exciting the populace with visions of prosperity. But the railroad went bankrupt on July 1, 1905, creating hardship for the townsfolk and the railroad workers who had moved to the area. The completion of the rival Missouri Pacific Line, which ran through Omaha, Boone County, 15 miles north of Harrison, left many more unemployed, both black and white. And in a quest to get another job, they went to different towns in search of jobs, and some of them found their way into Harrison, where their lack of deference, they had been independent and used to being paid well for their work, inflamed the anger of Harrison's white residents. The enmity that Harrison felt for its black population came to a head on October 2, 1905, when a white mob stormed the jail and took 2 black prisoners, one of whom had been charged 2 days earlier with breaking into Dr. John J. Johnson's residence, along with several others, and transported them outside city limits. There, they whipped their captives and ordered them to leave. The mob then went on a rampage through Harrison's black community. Numbering about 30, they burned down homes, shot out windows, and ordered all African Americans to vacate the town that night. Many did, fleeing to places such as Fayetteville, Washington County, and Eureka Springs, Carroll County, or to Missouri. In the following days, the people who had stayed were attacked and harassed, and on October 7, 1905, J.E. Hibdon, member of a posse, shot and killed black railroad worker George Richards at the Omaha Railroad Camp. Due to this, the town ranks amongst the most racist town in the United States of America, as its segregatory treatment for the black race hasn't reduced not even for once, with the headquarters of the Ku Klux Klan in the town. Although we're already in the 21st century, a trip to Harrison will certainly give you a feeling of the 18th century because you will seldom see a black in the town, as the population of blacks in the town isn't even up to 1%. Apart from that, the large controversial billboards in the entrance of the town that reads "White Pride Radio, Anti-Racist" is a code word for anti-white on the bright side, and so many other billboards showcasing the town's support for racism aren't welcoming at all. Number 1, Waterloo, Iowa. The last on the list is the famous Waterloo, Iowa, which is widely known for its strong hatred for the black race. In 2016, the Waterloo-Cedar Falls metro area found itself 10th on the list of racist towns in the U.S. of A, and on the release of the November article, the metro area was bumped to number 1. The article, published in November, had spread through social media like wildfire. Some were shocked. Others found their beliefs were, tragically, confirmed. Waterloo, Iowa's racial tension and discrimination have manifested in various ways throughout its history, mostly in the case of its racial segregation. Racial segregation exists very much in terms of housing, education, and public accommodations, limiting opportunities and creating disparities for the blacks. Waterloo, like many other racist cities, had designated areas for blacks, limiting their access to certain resources, amenities, and opportunities. This segregation gave room for constant inequality and restricted social interaction between the black and white races. Apart from what has been mentioned so far, their voting rights were also suppressed. The blacks faced a lot of obstacles in exercising their right to vote, such as involvement of poll taxes, literacy tests, grandfather clauses. All these laws were laid down in order to disenfranchise the blacks from expressing their rights, thereby silencing their political voices. Obviously, they barely have enough to cater for their needs. So why would they spend the little they have on voting when it's clearly obvious that they'll benefit little or nothing from it? Was this all? Definitely not. There were several instances of racial discrimination during job employment, house discrimination, racial violence and hate crimes, disparities in education, criminal justice disparities, economic inequalities, and lots more. It's true, change is the only constant thing in life. But could this work in the case of racism in Waterloo? One thing is certain. The racial disparity in the city of Waterloo remains a concern till this day, as racism still plagues the city. But God, could all these be fixed? Of course they can. The change we need begins from you and I. Every day, each and every one of us can stand up against racial prejudice and demeaning attitudes. Let's build a world beyond racism and discrimination, where we all exercise our human rights without any cause for worries. In closing, while racism is a complex issue with a long history, it doesn't have to define the future of these towns. Through education, open dialogue, and community outreach, we can work together to dismantle racist structures and create a more equitable society. There are many resources available to help combat racism, and it's important for everyone to get involved. By taking action, we can create a more inclusive future for all. That brings us to the end of yet another interesting video. Do kindly support our works by hitting the like button, share with friends and families to keep spreading the historic values. Don't hesitate to reach out through the comment section if you have any thoughts to share. We value your contribution always. And stay put for more coming your way. Thank you for watching.